Chapter 19. Rage of the Blue Lord. Shiva's carriage quickly turned into the gates of Atithigwa's palace. As it sped along the road around the central garden, an excited Shiva lifted Karthik into his arms and reached for the door. He was off as soon as the vehicle stopped, setting Karthik on the ground, holding his hand, and walked quickly ahead. Sati followed. Shiva stopped in his tracks as he saw Kali holding a puja thali, a prayer tray with a ceremonial lamp and flowers. What the? Standing in front of Shiva was a splitting image of Sati. Her eyes, face, build, everything, except that her skin was a jet black to Sati's bronze. Her hair open, unlike Sati, who usually restrained her flowing tresses. The woman was wearing royal clothing and ornaments. A cream and red-colored angavastram covered her entire torso. Then he noticed the two extra hands on her shoulder. A nervous Kali continued to stare at Shiva, unsure. Much to her surprise, Shiva stepped forward and embraced her gently, careful not to disturb the puja thali. "What a pleasure it is to meet you," said Shiva, smiling broadly. Kali smiled tentatively, shocked by Shiva's warm gesture, clearly at a loss for words. Shiva tapped the puja thali. "I think you're supposed to move this around my face 6 or 7 times in order to welcome me home." Kali laughed. "I'm sorry, just that I have been very nervous." "Nothing to be nervous about," grinned Shiva. "Just circle the thali around, shower flowers on me, and be sure not to drop the lamp. Burns are damn painful." Kali laughed and completed the ceremony, applying a red tilak on Shiva's forehead. "And now," said Shiva, "where's my other son?" Kali stepped aside. Shiva saw Ganesh in the distance, atop the stairs leading to Atithigwa's main palace. "That's my Dada," beamed Karthik at his father. Shiva smiled at Karthik. "Let's go meet him." Holding Karthik's hand, Shiva walked up the flight of stairs with Sati and Kali in tow. Everyone else waited quietly at the bottom, giving the family its own private moment. Ganesh, in a red dhoti and white angavastram, was standing at the entryway of his mother's wing of the palace, almost like a guard. As Shiva reached him, Ganesh bent to touch his father's feet. Shiva touched Ganesh's head gently, held his shoulder, and pulled the Naga up to embrace him, blessing him with a long life. "Ayushman Bhavamai." Shiva suddenly stopped, as he stared hard at Ganesh's calm almond-shaped eyes. His hands were rigid on Ganesh's shoulder, eyes narrowed hard. Ganesh shut his eyes and cursed his fate silently. He knew he had been recognized. Shiva's eyes continued to bore into Ganesh. Sati, looking surprised, whispered, "What's the matter, Shiva?" Shiva ignored her. He continued to stare at Ganesh with repressed rage. He reached for his pouch. "I have something that belongs to you." Ganesh kept quiet, continuing to stare at Shiva, his eyes melancholic. He didn't need to look in order to know what Shiva was bringing out of his pouch. The bracelet, whose clasp had been destroyed, belonged to him. He had lost it at Mount Mandar. It was frayed at the edges by flames that had tried to consume it. The embroidered symbol of Om in the center was unblemished. But it wasn't a normal Om symbol. The representation of the ancient holy word had been constructed from snakes. The serpent Om. Ganesh quickly took his bracelet from Shiva's hand. Sati looked on with disbelieving eyes. Shiva, what is going on? Furious rage was pouring out of Shiva's eyes. Shiva, repeated Sati as she touched her husband's shoulder anxiously. Shiva flinched at Sati's touch. Your son killed my brother, he growled. Sati was shocked, disbelieving. Shiva spoke again. This time his voice was hard, furious. Your son killed Brihaspati. Kali sprang forward. But it wasn't. The queen of the Nagas fell silent at a gesture from Ganesh. The Naga continued to look straight at Shiva, offering no explanations, waiting for the Nilkant's verdict, his punishment. Shiva stepped close to Ganesh, uncomfortably close, till his fuming breath blew hard on Ganesh. You are my wife's son. It is the only reason why I am not going to kill you. Ganesh lowered his eyes, hands held in supplication, refusing to say anything. Get out of my house, roared Shiva. Get out of this land. Never show your face here again. The next time I may not be so forgiving. But Shiva, he's my son, begged Sati. He killed Brihaspati. Shiva? He killed Brihaspati. Sati stared blankly, tears flowing down her cheeks. Shiva, he is my son. I cannot live without him. Then live without me. Sati was stunned. Shiva, please don't do this. How can you ask me to make this choice? Ganesh finally spoke. Father, Shiva interrupted Ganesh angrily. I am not your father. Ganesh bowed his head, took a deep breath and spoke up once again. O great Nilkant, you are known for your fairness, your sense of justice. The crime is mine. Don't punish my mother for my sins. Ganesh pulled his knife out, the same knife that Sati had flung at him in Ayodhya. Take my life, but don't curse my mother with a fate worse than death. She cannot live without you. No! Screamed Sati as she darted in front of Ganesh. Please, Shiva, he's my son. He's my son. Shiva's anger turned ice cold. Looks like you have made your choice. He picked up Karthik. Shiva, pleaded Sati, please don't go. Please. Shiva looked at Sati, his eyes moist, but voice ice cold. This is something I cannot accept, Sati. Brihaspati was like my brother. Shiva walked down the steps, carrying Karthik with him as the shocked Kashi citizenry kept deathly silent. Shiva doesn't know the entire picture. Why didn't you tell him? Asked an agitated Kali. Kali and Ganesh were sitting in Sati's chambers in Atithigwa's palace. Sati, torn between her love for her long-lost son and her devotion to her husband, had gone to the Branga building where Shiva had set up temporary quarters. She was trying to reason with him. I can't. I have given my word, Mausi, answered Ganesh, his calm voice hiding the deep sadness within. But no, Mausi, this remains between you and me. There is only one condition under which the secret behind the attack on Mount Mandar can be revealed. I don't see that happening too soon. But tell your mother at least. A word of honor does not stop at a mother's door. Didi is suffering. I thought you would do anything for her. I will. She can live without me, but not without the Mahadev. She is not letting me leave because of her guilt at not being there for me earlier. What are you saying? You will leave? Yes, in another 10 days. Once the Meluhan general and the Chandravanshi princess's wedding celebrations are done, then father can return home. Your mother will not allow this. It doesn't matter. I will leave. I will not be the reason for my parents' separation. Your Highness, said Kanakhala, the Meluhan Prime Minister, it is not advisable for you to leave for Swadweep without a formal invitation. It is against protocol. What nonsense, said Daksha. I am the Emperor of India. I can go wherever I please. Kanakhala was a loyal Prime Minister, but she did not want her Emperor to commit any act which would embarrass the empire. But the terms of the Ayodhya Treaty are that Swadweep is only our vassal and has direct control over its own territory. Protocol dictates that we seek their permission. They cannot deny permission. You are their lord, but it's a formality that must be completed. No formality is needed. I am just a father going to meet his favorite daughter. Kanakhala frowned. Your Highness, you have only one daughter. Yes, yes, I know, said Daksha, waving his hand dismissively. Look, I am leaving in 3 weeks. You can send a messenger to Swadweep asking for permission, all right? Your Highness, bird couriers are still not set up in Ayodhya. You know how inefficient those people are. And Ayodhya is farther than Kashi, so even if the messenger leaves today, he will reach Ayodhya in a little over 3 months. You will reach Kashi at the same time. Daksha smiled. Yes, I will. Go and make arrangements for my departure. Kanakhala sighed, bowed, and left the chambers. The Emperor of Swadweep, Dilipa, had planned grand festivities to celebrate the wedding of his daughter Anandamayi and Parvateshwar. But the unexpected bitterness between the Mahadev and his wife had soured the mood. However, the pujas could not be cancelled. It would be an insult to the gods. While all the parties had been put on hold, the pujas to the elemental gods Agni, Vayu, Prithvi, Varun, Surya and Som were to proceed as planned. The puja for the sun god was being conducted at the Surya temple on the sacred avenue, just a little south of Assi Ghat. A grand platform had been erected on the road, directly overlooking the temple. Shiva and Sati were seated next to each other on specific thrones designed for them. Unlike their earlier public appearances, they were sitting stiff and apart. Shiva was not even looking at Sati, righteous anger still radiating from every pore in his body. He had only come for the puja and would return to the Branga residence as soon as it was over. Every citizen of Kashi who had never seen Shiva's temper was deeply troubled, but none more than Karthik. He had been pestering both his parents to get back together, knowing Karthik would get even more insistent if he saw the both of them together. Shiva had told Kritika to take Karthik to the park adjoining the nearby Sankat Mochan temple. Next to Shiva on the platform built for the thrones were Kali, Bhagirath, Dilipa, Atithigwa and Ayurvati. Parvateshwar and Anandamayi were at the temple platform where the Surya Pandit helped them consecrate their love with the purifying blessings of the sun god. To avoid an embarrassing situation, Ganesh had wisely declined his invitation to the puja. While all of Kashi was at the puja, Ganesh sat by himself at the Sankat Mochan temple. He had first gone to the adjoining park to meet his little brother for the first time in 10 days, carrying a sack full of mangoes. After a lively 30 minutes, Ganesh had retired to the temple, leaving Karthik to play with Kritika and his 5 bodyguards. He sat there quietly, gazing at Lord Hanuman, the most ardent devotee of Lord Ram. Lord Hanuman was called Sankat Mochan for a reason. People believed he always helped his devotees in a crisis. Ganesh thought that even Lord Hanuman would find it impossible to help him out of this mess. Neither could he imagine a life without his mother, nor could he bear it if he became the reason for his parents leaving separately. He had decided to leave Kashi the next day, but he knew that he would spend the rest of his life pining for his mother, now that he had experienced her love. He smiled as he heard the loud cacophony of Karthik's boisterous antics in the park, the carefree laughter of a soul strongly nourished by his mother's love. Ganesh sighed, knowing such carefree laughter would never be a part of his destiny. He drew out his sword, pulled a smooth stone, and started doing what Kshatriyas usually do when they have nothing else to do: sharpen their blades. So lost was Ganesh in his thoughts that he paid heed to his gut instinct quite late. Something strange was happening in the park. He held his breath and listened, and then it hit him. The park had gone absolutely quiet. What had happened to the loud laughter of Karthik, Kritika, and his companions? Ganesh got up quickly, put his sword into his scabbard, and started walking towards the park. And then he heard it. A low growl followed by a deafening roar. The kill was nigh. Lions! Ganesh drew his sword and started sprinting. A man was stumbling towards him. One of the Kashi soldiers who was slashed across his arm, the clear markings of sharp claws. How many? Ganesh was loud enough for the soldier to hear even at a distance. The Kashi soldier did not respond. He just stumbled forward, shell-shocked. Ganesh reached him in no time, jolted him hard, and repeated again, "How many?" "Three," said the soldier. "Get the Mahadev." The soldier still looked shocked. Ganesh shook him again. "Get the Mahadev now." The soldier started running towards the Sun Temple as Ganesh turned towards the park. The Kashi soldier knew what he was running away from, and yet his feet were unsteady. Ganesh knew what he was running towards, but his pace was sure and strong. He used a side stone as leverage to leap over the park fence without a sound. He landed on the other side, close to a lioness, busy crushing the broken neck of a soldier between her jaws, asphyxiating an already dead man. Ganesh slashed at her as he ran by, cutting through a major vein on her shoulder. Blood poured out of the lioness's wound as Ganesh raced towards Kritika, another Kashi soldier, and Karthik, who were at the center of the garden. Two other soldiers were lying dead in a far corner. Judging from their positions, they were probably the first to be killed. Ganesh dashed at Kritika's side. They were hemmed in from one side by a lioness and a massive liger. "Bhumi Devi, be merciful. They have followed us from Ichhawar." The other side was blocked off by the lioness, whose shoulder was bleeding profusely after Ganesh's blow. Karthik, his wooden sword drawn, was ready for battle. Ganesh knew Karthik was childishly brave enough to charge at the liger with just his wooden sword. He stood in front of his brother, with Kritika on one side and the soldier on the other. "No way out," whispered Kritika, sword drawn. Ganesh knew Kritika was not a trained warrior. Her maternal instincts would drive her to protect Karthik, but she probably wouldn't be able to kill any of the cats. The soldier on the other side was shivering. He was unlikely to be much help. Ganesh nodded towards the bleeding lioness, limping towards them. "She will not last too long. I have cut a major vein." The liger was circling them while moving towards the front as the lionesses flanked the humans. Ganesh knew it was only a matter of time. They were preparing for the charge. "Pull back," whispered Ganesh, slowly. There was a hollow in the main trunk of a banyan tree behind them. Ganesh intended to push Karthik in there and defend it from the lionesses. "We can't last long," said Kritika. "I will try to distract them. You run with Karthik." Ganesh didn't turn towards Kritika, staring hard at the liger, but his admiration for Veerbhadra's wife shot up. She was willing to die for his brother. "That won't work," said Ganesh. "I can't move fast enough with Karthik. The walls are high. Help is on its way. The Mahadev is coming. We just have to hold the lions off for some time." Kritika and the soldier followed Ganesh's lead as they edged slowly to the rear, pushing Karthik back. The liger and lionesses crept forward, their blind aggression from just a few moments earlier dissipating at the sight of the giant man holding a blood-stained sword. A little while later, Karthik had been pushed into the banyan hollow, with the trees hanging roots tied around it to prevent him from charging out. He was safe, at least for as long as Ganesh stood. The cats charged. Ganesh was surprised to see the limping lioness bounding forward. Kritika was covering that area. "Stay low!" shouted Ganesh. He couldn't move to support Kritika since the liger could charge through the opening to attack Karthik. "Stay low, Kritika! She's injured. She can't leap high." Kritika had held her sword low, waiting for the wounded lioness to reach her. But to her surprise, the big cat suddenly veered left. As Kritika was about to charge after her, she heard a blood-curdling scream. The lioness from the other side had used the distraction and crept up to the Kashi soldier. He was screaming in agony as the lioness dragged his body back, slashing at him with her claws. The soldier kept screeching, trying to push the lioness back, hitting her with weak blows from his sword. She kept hitting into him, finally getting a choke hold on the convulsing soldier's neck. Moments later, he was dead. The liger remained stationary in front of Ganesh, blocking any escape. The other lioness left the dead Kashi soldier and returned to position. Ganesh breathed slowly. He marveled at the intelligent pack-hunting behavior these animals were displaying. "Stay low," said Ganesh to Kritika. "I will cover the liger and this lioness. You have to focus on the injured one. I cannot see to all three. These animals hunt as a pack. Whoever gets distracted is dead." Kritika nodded as the injured lioness started ambling towards him. The animal was losing too much blood from her shoulder injury. She was slow in her movements. Suddenly, she charged at Kritika. As the lioness came close, she leaped high as her injured shoulder allowed. It was a weak jump. Kritika bent low, holding her sword up high, brutally stabbing it into the lioness's heart. The beast fell on Kritika and was soon dead. Ganesh glanced at Kritika out of the corner of his eye. Before being felled, the lioness had managed to dig her claws into Kritika and rip away a part of her shoulder. Kritika was bleeding profusely, practically immobile under the lioness's corpse, which was pinning her down. But she was alive. She had Ganesh in her line of sight. Ganesh flipped his shield onto his back, pulled out his second shorter sword, and stood close to the banyan tree. The short sword had a twin blade, which clipped together as the victim's body moved. It was a fearsome weapon if it was stabbed deep into a body, as it would cut again and again. Ganesh waited, biding time, hoping the Mahadev would arrive before it was too late. The liger moved to Ganesh's right, the lioness to his left. There was enough distance between the beasts to make it difficult for Ganesh to observe both of them at the same time. Having established a good offensive position, the animals moved forward slowly, in sync. The lioness suddenly charged. Ganesh lashed out with his left hand, but the shorter sword did not have the reach. The movement forced him to look left. The liger, taking advantage, charged into Ganesh and bit hard into his right leg at the same spot that Ganesh had been injured in at Ichhavar. Ganesh screamed in agony and swung hard with his right sword arm, slashing the liger across the face. The liger retreated, but not before he had bitten off a chunk of Ganesh's thigh. Ganesh was losing blood fast. He stepped back, leaning against the banyan tree. His kid brother was screaming behind him, shouting to be let out so that he could battle the lions too. Ganesh did not move, and the cats charged again. This time the liger came first. Seeing a pattern in their attack, Ganesh kept his eyes dead center, able to now see both the liger and lioness. He held his right sword out to stop the liger from coming in too close. The liger slowed down and the lioness came in faster. Ganesh jabbed hard with his short sword straight into the lioness's shoulder, but not before she had bitten into Ganesh's limb. The lioness retreated with Ganesh's short twin-blade sword buried in her shoulder, after having left another gaping injury in Ganesh's left arm. Ganesh knew that he couldn't stand on his feet much longer. He was losing too much blood. He did not want to fall sideways because Karthik would then become vulnerable. He fell back and sat against the tree, covering the hollow with his body. The animal would have to go through him to get to his brother. Due to the severe loss of blood, Ganesh's vision was beginning to blur. But despite that, he could see that the wound on the lioness had been telling. She was still struggling at a distance from her, trying to lick her shoulder, unable to stand straight. As she moved, the twin blade cut farther into her, hacking tissue away from the bone. He saw the liger moving in from the right, edging closer. Once close enough, the liger bounded and lashed out with his paw while Ganesh slashed with his sword at the same time. The liger's claw tore through Ganesh's face, causing a deep gash on his long nose. Simultaneously, Ganesh's blow gouged the liger's left eye. The animal retreated, howling in agony. But Karthik had seen what Ganesh hadn't. He was trying to reach out with his wooden sword, but he couldn't get far enough. "Dada, look out!" The lioness had used Ganesh's distraction to crawl closer. She lunged forward and bit into Ganesh's chest. Ganesh swung his blade, slashing her face. The lioness retreated, snarling in pain, but not before ripping out a large amount of flesh from Ganesh's torso. The Naga's heart, pumping blood and adrenaline through the body at a furious rate, was now working against him as the numerous wounds leaked blood alarmingly. Ganesh knew his end was near. He couldn't last much longer, and then he heard a loud war cry, "Har Har Mahadev!" A warm, comforting darkness was beaconing Ganesh. He struggled to stay awake. Nearly 50 furious Suryavanshi soldiers charged into the park. They fell upon the two big cats. The weakened animals did not stand a chance and were soon killed. Through his rapidly fading vision, Ganesh thought he saw a handsome figure rushing towards him, bloodied sword held to the side, his throat an iridescent blue. Behind the man he could barely make out the blurred vision of a bronzed woman racing towards him, a warrior princess. The blood of the liger splattered all over her. The Naga smiled, delighted to be the bearer of good news to two of the most important people in his world. "Don't worry, Baba," whispered Ganesh to his father. "Your son is safe. He is hidden behind me." Saying so, Ganesh collapsed, unconscious.